Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro, and you're listening to another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. And today we are joined by Joe. He is in South Dakota. I'm going to let him talk all about that and some of the interesting project, the great project that he's doing. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Very good to see you. How are you this morning?
Not bad. Been up for a bit, but only have had one cup of coffee so far. And I'm a 3 large cup of coffees a morning guy. So
All day, I get it.
I will be brewing some more as soon as we're done here for some fresh coffee. So Joe, give us a little bit of introduction of yourself, maybe a little bit of your history, as I always do. And, we don't have to go into long, childhood trauma stories or anything like that. Just a little bit of overview, just to help people understand how you got to where you are today and some of those motivational things. Okay.
Sure. So, Dennis, you bring up a good point. We all have the childhood trauma that we all survived. Just there are more extenuating circumstances for part of our population than others. My background, not that bad. But how this all started, how our nonprofit formed was I was at my barber, and my barber's son is a stepson is trans male, and he was rejected by his biological father, dropped off with clothing and a trash bag, literally, and told he wasn't parenting anymore, that they could deal with it, that he wasn't dealing with a trans child. And through that conversation, I learned that my barber was having great difficulty finding counseling, supportive counseling for their family and for their son. So with that, a whole nonprofit was born. We should all have counseling, and then through the counseling, learned that just the housing instability and insecurities are so great within our community, especially for LGBTQ plus youth. Right now, approximately 1,764,000 LGBTQ youth ages 13 to 24 are homeless. That's shocking.
Yes, I've seen many studies of that, and I don't think I may have met someone who was homeless, and they may not have disclosed that to me, but you've been personally impacted. As far as knowing a young person, and that drove you to do something about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People don't consider couch surfing or some of the other, or doubling up some of the other insecurities as being homeless. But if you don't truly have your own home, you are homeless. And matter of fact, I believe HUD has changed that identity to include things like that. Kids get thrown out of the house every day. Unfortunately, parents are not always affirming, are not always supportive. And that's how we get to that number, 1,764,000 homeless youth. If you're thrown out of the house at 13 to 24, you're not necessarily prepared for life and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a really good point. Even if you're staying at a friend's house, even if you have your own bedroom at that friend's house, it's not yours. And you could be kicked out of there at any time for any reason, right? It's not your home. It's not, your family. So there's home insecurity.
And then like that rejection comes with other obstacles that I just never considered before. Like I just got back from a homeless summit in South Dakota, and the Youth Advisory Board required by HUD, it makes up youth 13 to 24 that have 80% have had to experience homelessness. Out of that Youth Advisory Board, that there are 12 on it, 8 identified as LGBTQ plus, which reaffirms the numbers that the majority of people seeking services, or at least a very large portion, up to 40%, are LGBTQ plus. And like one young lady said to me, she said, at 18, I was outgrew the foster system. I was released, didn't know how to make my own doctor's appointment, didn't know how to make my own dental appointment. I didn't have ID. And I'm like, well, you just went down to the DMV and got ID. She's like, no, you don't understand. I didn't have a birth certificate, didn't have a social security card, didn't have a driver's license. So, all of these things require each other in order just to get an apartment. So even if she would have had the funding to start as an 18-year-old in her own apartment, she had an obstacle with ID.
Yeah, very interesting. I could see that challenge. And I mean, even just, even for functioning adults who have their own home already, just losing your wallet, just replacing those things is a pain in the hiney, right?
Sure,
And
absolutely.
thinking about not having the documentation to obtain those at all, that's yeah, I would be, well, which one do you start with? Because to get a social security card, you also have to prove who you are, right? But then to get your driver's license, I guess you'd start with your birth, trying to get a certified copy of your birth certificate.
Yep. And then if you were rejected by your parents for being LGBTQ, they're not going to help you get your birth certificate. Most of them don't even have communication at that point. So asking a mother or father, hey, I need you to go get my birth certificate after you've been thrown out of the house doesn't work so well.
Very, very interesting. So it's sad, but interesting, which is why I love to have people of all kinds on the show. And that's what fascinated about me having you on the show, is to bring awareness to the difficulties of this. And so what would someone do in a situation like that?
Frequently, like we chose purposely to put our location in South Dakota. If you go on Centerlink or one of those other resources that list where different resources are for LGBTQ plus people, there's really nothing in South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska. And I thought, all these metro areas have these great centers, have this great resources. They don't have them there. And then looking at the population according to census, just as many LGBTQ plus people live there, just within 200 miles of where our center is going to be. The population for LGBTQ plus is almost 29,000 people. It's 29,000 people without a community center, without resources. So to go back to your point of what would a person do in that situation, like that young lady had to go to a judge and appeal to force her parents who no longer spoke to her for her being LGBTQ plus, to force them to give her a copy of her birth certificate. So that requires money. That requires a place to stay. She couldn't get an apartment. So that housing insecurity for someone in her situation is terrible. Getting a job is impossible without ID. And we just don't realize as a community, because it's kind of an invisible thing. We don't talk about our struggles. We talk about our successes as a community. It's such a real thing still. We need to support these youth in order to make sure that they have the resources.
That person was in the South Dakota area, correct?
Correct.
And yeah, I'm just thinking, as you were just talking again, thinking about going to an attorney or something. Are there legal services for homeless youth and or LGBT youth to support them in this process?
In rural areas, it's very difficult to connect with services. And that was one of the reasons why, again, we chose that area. I've reached out to attorneys on her behalf and on others who would be glad to work pro bono to help a youth out. But without a connection to the resources, she's still at square one with no ID, no job, no home.
So, so let's talk about, how you formed your organization and what is the mission, the goals, what do you currently do, and have the capacity to do, and what are you looking to do in the future?
Sure. So currently we are helping connect youth with counselors, not just youth, anybody. We've had some seniors during COVID that feel isolation and needed counseling support, which I think all of us during COVID needed some type of support. So we're connecting them with resources. We currently have 3 LGBTQ plus counselors who know how to affirm and work with our community because they're part of our community, which is really important. So we're referring to counseling, we're referring to affirming care for doctors, dentists, and then we are fundraising for, the picture behind me is actually the location as a destination counseling center, and then the full service cabins, which all have living room, dining rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, are supportive housing for those that need housing insecurities met. So if you were a youth 24 years old and you had nowhere to stay other than to sleep on your friend's sofa, we could provide you a place to live while we help you with resources to get you on your feet.
All right. Wow. And well, what is the name of the organization?
It's the LGBTQ plus Family Connections Center. Big name, but it kind of says what we all needed. When I came out, I had some older, very supportive, friends who had already dealt with those insecurities in life and dealt with rejection, and I had some family rejection. And I kept thinking, it's my responsibility as a person in my 50s to help provide this for the youth who are coming up now, who have more unique challenges than I did. They're coming out earlier. They're not ready for being sustainable on their own. And that family rejection is starting earlier and earlier. I believe I read the statistic the other day, the average youth that is displaced from a home, is a nice way to say it, or rejected by their family and asked to leave their home, is 0.4. At 14.4, I was watching cartoons and MTV. I had no idea how to take care of myself.
Yes. And you'd be amazed how many people, I'll be honest, I was shocked whenever my nephew was starting to go off to college. He had to be taught how to do laundry and basic cooking. I'm like, what? Are you serious?
That's part of the program that we do. It's not just the counseling and helping them with community. It's little things like that. Like, when I went to the school, we had to take a class that was part of the home ec, credit, that you learned how to balance a checkbook. You learned how to write an application for employment. You learned how to get your ID, things like that. They don't necessarily teach that as a requirement anymore, which is unfortunate. So if you don't have a parent or an adult who, as you're being raised, teaching you those things, you kind of are lost. And, you look on the internet, it's even worse. Like, like you said, with the ID, what do I do first? So teaching those resources, and then also helping with giving a skill. Not everybody, my background is in HR and placement, so not everyone has a skill that's marketable, and we would prefer that the youth aren't working in fast food. We would prefer to give them a career. So things like learning administrative while being a paid intern, working with us, or placing them in a company that could help them facilitate a career is really important.
I'll share with you, very interestingly, I had a conversation with a fellow the other day. Lives in another country, and I know there's cultural differences, but I mean, this guy's getting ready to go off on his own. He is 24, I believe he said, and 28. And he's getting ready to go off to Greece, to Athens from his, he lives in a country not far from there. And I mean, it sounded a little like his family was a little affluent for their area, but his mother brings him breakfast in bed every single day. When he gets up to go to work, she comes in and makes his bed and, does all the cleaning. His father won't even let him pick up the groceries out of the vehicle. I'm like, okay. So he has no life skills. And, but here he was in the, in a home of a bit of affluence. And then again, my example of my nephew, who, I mean, he has to be forced to even clean the bathroom, and does not know how to cook. Everything that he does is purchased ready-made food and microwave, right? And so, I just see that as it's shocking to me because I was cooking family meals at 15 years old for the whole family because my stepmother did not cook very well anyways. So Yeah. So I mean, I have some like personal experience to know that how difficult that is. And you're right. If in school they're not teaching that, and if the parents aren't teaching it, but now a person who's displaced, from their family life, is now out on their own and has to do it. And so you're now helping to provide the services to help them get on their feet, teach them those skills, and help them get marketable in a career path. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and just like what you said, like the other day, I was talking to a young man that he is in his late 20s now. That I didn't realize how much trafficking is still a thing. I mean, it's like you said. I don't know anybody that was trafficked. I do now. Um, but he's telling me as a story. His parents threw him out at 14, and some older man said, "Hey, come with me. I live in Austin. I have a beautiful house. I'll take care of you." And that person owned massage parlors, and that youth was forced into sex trade, eventually escaped it, and then went back to the sex trade because he didn't know how to support himself or, you know, to do anything because he didn't have those tools to begin with. And and I thought, wow, his story, it just can't be true. And then I'm looking up the court cases because the gentleman that trafficked him had been prosecuted and got 30 years, but it was all 100% accurate. And I thought, how sad is this that we don't talk enough about that you know, millions of kids are trafficked every year.
Yes, yes. There's an organization here in Fort Lauderdale. I've been chasing the founder of it to do an interview, but he remains so busy. And he runs a nonprofit specifically for trafficked young men. So,
Mm-hmm.
they literally go out on the streets at night to try to find kids to help them as well. So, it's been a few months since I have attempted to reach out to him. So I appreciate you bringing that very important topic up, because sometimes I think the general population don't think as young men being trafficked, right? They
Very frequently,
most
very
people,
frequently.
yeah, just like
And we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to associate with anybody in our community would hurt a child. And I believe 99.9% would never hurt a child and only have good intentions of providing support. But we don't talk about it enough because we don't want that twisted. And look what happened in the LGBTQ plus community. We would like to show all the things that we do to support youth to prevent those things and not talk about the negative incidents that happen. But the reality is it does happen.
yes. And to be clear for the audience, for a male to be trafficked does not mean that he identifies as part of the LGBT community, but is
Very much so.
being forced into it. Very, very interesting. So, where are your plans now? What are some of your successes and challenges, and what does the road look ahead for your organization?
Our success is there's great resources for people like me who are doing something like this um, with other people that have already done it. Carl Siciliano from Alley Forney Center, who is amazing. It's one of the, I believe it is the largest youth homeless shelter in the United States for LGBTQ plus people. He's a mentor to me. He helps me with programming and helps us develop our board. So things like that, things like Zane Ishmael from Henry Ford Health Centers is helping work on an app that we can reach people that are in rural areas that as long as they can get to internet, they can reach out to us so that it's, if they're in a home where they can't make a phone call openly, they can still get to us and we can help them with services. So those things are successful. There's tons of professionals willing to step up and help. At Pride, we had, I believe, 6 social workers who signed up as volunteer, to help. We met a couple more counselors that we're vetting. So those things are all successful for me. I feel great about where we're going in that part. The visibility is starting to happen. Currently, we are under contract for the property behind us, which will include 10 full amenity cabins, a counseling center, and then community center on site. So we hope to close on that in February, and that's our biggest goal right now, just to get in and to do the work other than virtually.
Great. And yeah, I would imagine, don't know if you were prepared to chat about this, but I would imagine, funding uh, is challenging, or, are there grants out there, and then we'll get to, how would someone donate? Because,
Sure.
because you're right, so many people, because there is a concentration in the larger cities, like Fort Lauderdale's neck and neck with San
Sure.
Francisco is the largest, LGBT community in the US. But, you know, but LGBT people are everywhere, right? And you and your center is definitely demonstrating that, and I'm just so inspired by what you are doing. So I'm just curious, what are the resources out there other than the volunteers, which is absolutely fantastic, but it takes money to
Absolutely.
run that. These youth are going to need personal hygiene products. They're going to need maybe even a cell phone, or maybe even, you're going to need computers, laptops, printers, everything for this to work. You have electricity to pay for. You're going to have a mortgage to pay for, and and food. Oh my gosh, So how does that look for you? And frame it in a way so people will hopefully get inspired and go, oh, I want to donate to that.
So to answer your question, frequently people are under the impression that there are federal, state, and foundation grants, and there are. But those things are usually 3 to 5 year development. They don't come right away. HUD loves what we're doing. I'm frequently in meetings, and several people that are within the Biden administration are like, "This is so neat. This is amazing," but nobody writes you a check. It takes 3 to 5 years to have those grants, maybe 18 months for some to be sustainable. So, the community, being LGBTQ plus community, have to identify that the work that nonprofits do needs community support, because the property itself belongs to the public. It's a nonprofit. So we have to support projects within our own community in order to make them successful.
Yeah, understood. Of course, I'm thinking of, perhaps going down the list of donors to other organizations who serve youth. Thinking of one right now, uh, but and possibly, reaching out to the corporations. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you had like Levi's sponsor you?
Sure. Absolutely.
And because they could provide jeans and t-shirts and things like that at almost no cost to them, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, minuscule cost.
When you bring up a good point that it's not even just financial or volunteering your time. When we all do. I cleaned out my closet a couple of weeks ago because, I got the COVID-10 where I gained 10 pounds and some things didn't fit well. And instead of donating those to Goodwill or something like that, I took them to a shelter. It wasn't an LGBTQ plus shelter, but it was a shelter because in those clothing, I had things that were suitable for interview, things that were suitable to go to work. And I would rather see someone directly benefit from that other than an organization that's going to sell it and pay a CEO, an astronomical salary. Like I've done this for a year and a half. I take no salary. We are surviving on one income, my husband's income, because this work is far more important to me than, whether we can take the next vacation or not. I have a house. I'm fortunate. I have a house. I have food.
Gotcha. But yeah, and starting a nonprofit, even just starting your own business, you have to, you can start it on the side, but if you're not all in, it's not going to happen. That's why even
Just today, I work probably 70 hours a week, and like the HUD application process, months. It's just one application for one grant takes about 6 months to facilitate. And it's a wonderful program, but it's the government. They're going to make sure that everything is done correctly and that what you're doing is supportive to a community. So it's a great deal of time and energy invested.
Well, other corporations come to mind for me. I'm just thinking of all of your basic necessities. Grocery stores could uh, be possibly a donation. Large chains and so forth. Of course, technology companies to donate hardware, software. Of course, there's some free software that's really good too. But so I strongly encourage you to take a look at that. We can talk offline a little bit about
Sure.
some of that, and maybe
I have reached out to, we get a meal subscription plan, and that meal subscription plan does donate to the community quite a bit. So we're starting to reach out to those corporate sponsors as well to see, one of the things, we want you to have a sense of community, that you prepare dinner and you sit down as a community together and have a meal, which is how I was raised. So you're right. Those things are so essential to what we're doing every day.
yeah, you got to have the basics, right? Because if you have a house over a roof over your head, but no food and no clothing or no shoes, like Sketcher, hi Sketcher,
Exactly.
want to come donate?
Exactly. And if you could make
Work
that happen, you would be amazing.
work shoes, fun shoes, yeah. Well, and yeah, so well, I don't necessarily have all the right connections right now, but that's part of doing these shows is helping to get visibility and
And there are amazing organizations who are so involved in the community. Like, we all talk about it when in my generation in the 70s, if they stuck a innuendo of a gay couple or a lesbian couple in a commercial, we were all like, did you see the commercial? There, it was so exciting. Now we want to see, do you live those practices within your organization? Do you support those practices fully? And do you support the LGBTQ plus community? And you brought that to mind, and like P&G with their fundraising efforts the last couple of years, amazing. And they it's a principle they live inside their company. So there are those companies, fortunately.
And of course, we'll have links down below that you'll be providing me after the show. So those will be, if you'd like to find out more about this organization and reach out to Joe, his links and so forth will be in the show notes on whatever application or site that you are viewing or watching this. I know, Joe, share with me what you see for your 5 year, like in 5 years, where would you like to be? What would you like to have be on your way to have, to get, to accomplish, etc.?
So, our long-term plan, obviously, to purchase the center, get the sustainable housing and the counseling provided. One of the other really big things that are needed, and I'm approaching that age where I start to think about those things. But our seniors, we want the community center to have, coffee in the morning to make sure that our seniors are doing well. We want to have outreach to that, similar to like Meals on Wheels, where we go to their home, do a wellness check, because again, LGBTQ plus people have unique community needs. And you may not talk to somebody from Meals on Wheels that you don't identify with and say, oh, I lost my partner, or express those personal things that need, you would possibly need assistance. So long term, obviously get the center running well, help those states expand the service area into more rural parts, since 20% of the population does live in rural areas. And then we're not going to overcome the homelessness because we're not going to overcome the rejection in our lifetime. It's a slow process. But what we're going to do is provide sustainability and a future for those that need our services, and hopefully put them into a place where later they're buying their own home and they're assisting their own community.
And those, who tend to receive, hopefully in the future when they're able, tend to give back.
And that's so true. And within our community, we don't always talk about our past, but the people that tend to go through the most rejection tend to be the ones that support later the most. The people that have had family rejection or have had discrimination at work, or the neighbor who was a jerk for 5 years and made their life miserable. Those are the people that tend to remember, I want to help the next person not go through this. it reaffirms for me every day when we connect with someone or I'm able to provide a resource for youth and listening to their stories. We all have unique lives, but we all have the same obstacles. That family rejection or discrimination is still real. It's still happening, and it hasn't gone away yet.
Yeah, we've come a long way, baby, but we've got so much further to go, right?
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, Joe, it's been absolute delight chatting with you again.
You as well. You're always fun to talk to, and I love what you're doing in the community. I used to believe that we should integrate as much as possible and assimilate, and now I firmly believe no, we should support each other, build each other up, and let the world come to us and see us as the leaders.
Thank you, everyone, for staying tuned to this very inspirational story. Joe is really taking on a large project in a much needed area for a much worthy cause. I hope that this has inspired you to check out more about what he's doing. I'm Dennis Velco with OutBüro Voices. We'll see you on outbureau.com. Bye-bye.